Greetings, my name is Blaze and welcome to my channel. If you've not been here before, I talk about thought, theory, and my interpretation when it comes to things that I'm interested in. For today's video, I actually have a video request from World Traveler. What is your take on the correlation between prayer for religious people and enchantment for magical practitioners, respective to how physical speech is used to manifest the intent of the mind into some energy? The Bible says you can manifest through your words. If you believe what you say, you will have it. Likewise, I have read several magical texts that say the exact same thing. If you cast a spell, you have to focus on what you say and believe it, and it will be more powerful and effective. Also, having seen the video where a man made one bowl of rice mold quickly and another resistant to mold after several months, by just speaking the positive and negative words to the two bowls, I find that enough evidence to scientifically conclude that there exists a law in nature that is not in the textbooks, that a human being has the power to manifest combined mental intent and focus with audible speech to manifest the desires into existence. I don't know how it works, like a car that I can pop the hood of, but I know it must be true. What are your thoughts? Could you do a video on this? Absolutely. So this is going to be a very interesting video because I have a few thoughts on numerous points that you bring up here. Let's start out with prayer versus enchantments for magical practitioners. So enchantments, in my opinion, work in a way of like sending energy. So I think we can't just limit it to enchantments. I think spells or magical intent period would be included in that. Likewise, prayer is 100%, in my opinion, in that same category. I believe prayer is like a type of spell. I think spell is a type of prayer. I think they're pretty much the same thing. Not everybody's going to agree with that, and I'm just going to make that very clear. That's my opinion. So I think pretty much that's the exact same stuff. I think priests, in a way, are a type of magical practitioner because some of the modern New Age type of magical practitioners are, in essence, a type of priest or priestess, and a lot of them will tell you that, too. So yeah, just want to point that piece out as far as where my mind's coming from there. As far as manifesting things through speech, it's interesting that you mentioned that because in many different traditions that I have seen, speech is very important. So speaking your spells out loud can be very important. Yes, doing them in the head as well and just thinking them versus speaking them. Speaking them is one way of manifesting them into our realm. And what I mean by that is you're creating an audible sound. You're creating a vibration with your voice. Think of the way, again, tuning forks will affect each other. I've used this in other videos before. One tuning fork can cause another one to vibrate. Causing a vibration with your voice is another layer. So you have your intent and what you want. Then you focus on it and you amplify that intent. Now you're speaking it and you're adding another layer to that intent. It's the same reason people will do spells in the way that they do. They'll add candles sometimes or herbs and incense, and they will get into this meditative state. So they're adding this mental buildup. They're adding the candle flame, the color of the flame, and the burning of the wick, adding that to their spell. They're adding the herbs to their spell, the incense to their spell. Then they're speaking, they're adding that vibration to their spell as well. Typically, many practitioners, not all, but in some traditions, they'll cast a circle first, which is actually a globe, because they do a circle and then above and below, and they basically create an orb that is cut off at ground level, so it's just the same below as above, so it creates an orb with the earth at the midpoint of this orb of sphere of influence. Then they release it all at one time. So they build up in this little orb their intent, and then they release it for some of their spells. In prayer, people do this in church, and in some forms of prayer, because prayer is not just specific to monotheistic practices. But if you take like some of the different types of monotheistic practices where people do go to church, they go to that church, they're getting that sphere of influence. Inside that church is where they're building that all up. They'll sing hymns and they'll say prayers together, and they do this collective buildup of energy to release their prayer. Now, again, in that case, they're specifically looking to God and God's power, and that's where their energy and intent is coming from, this singular being, which depends on how they view it, but they're trying to gather it to a specific point. So likewise, that voice is very, very, very important. If you look at many of the different religions and traditions, people use their voice and they'll speak. I've heard people getting and cleansing houses by just simply speaking, like they'll feel an entity there and they will tell them that you have no power here and you must leave, and they will leave. pronouncing it goes a long way. If you go to any sort of religious ceremony, your verbal agreement, speaking it out loud, gives it binding power. That's why people will say staying true to your word. If you give your word, that has power. If you look at some of the Nordic Scandinavian traditions, like the revival, heathenry, and heathenism type of practices, voice is very important. So let's take some fiction for a second. If you've heard of J.R.R. Tolkien, Tolkien wrote, many books: Silmarillion, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and a whole bunch of expanded stuff for his Middle-earthen universe. But he drew from a lot of different traditions, including some of the heathen and Nordic Scandinavian stuff. And the interesting thing is his wizards, their voice is what powered their spells and their intent. In the Silmarillion, everything was created through sound and through vibration. So again, you have that power there. You even see that in the sagas and Eddas. If you look at the creation story with some of the Nordic stuff, you have Ymir had just been slain. His body got turned into Mithingardr, or Midgard, the earth itself. His blood was the oceans, and his eyelashes created the border between the realms. But you have this earth created, and Odin, Vili and Ve, his two brothers, found two pieces of driftwood. One was an ash tree and one was an elm tree, and they carved them into figures to represent, like themselves. They carved them in the figures, which was, of course, the first human male and female, and they named them Asker, which is ash tree, ash, and Embla, which is elm tree or elm. So you have the man and a woman, Ash and Embla, and Odin breathes into them breath and gives them life. So again, the breath and the voice having great power there. But speaking things, it's always been an important thing in a lot of different magical practices. So I absolutely believe that there is power in the voice, because I believe that a lot of energy in magical work is vibrational, even if it's on a subtle energy vibration level. If you want to look at it from a scientific point of view, and I'm not saying this is science, this is pseudoscience, so those of you who are scientific, don't jump my case over my personal beliefs, but all cells and molecules in our physical world are vibrating and moving at all times. You have, atoms and neutrons and protons, and they're constantly circling and moving, and there's this constant movement. Even physical solid objects, even our own body, even when we're holding still, it's moving. The table and desks, everything has a vibration and a movement to it. And that vibration is what is the essence and building blocks of our physical reality. So I believe that there can be an influence. That's why I think when you play music, people can feel so inspired. Music can invoke such emotion. That's why storytelling is so important. That's why we love our movies and our TV shows and our comic stories are important. And when you speak them out loud, it has a different resonance and power to it. Back in the olden days, skalds and bards and performers were people would just gather around and listen and be captivated. And if you've read a story versus hearing it performed by someone who's a trained bard or skald, it's a different experience to have them speak it out. Or if you've been to a live play versus watching a TV show, there's a power to it. Because again, I think there's a lot of power in the voice. Absolutely. Now, with what you're saying with intent, 100%. So I believe that we are manifesting on a regular basis in this world. And that's why I've mentioned I consider art to be a type of magic. Any type of art, poetry, sculpting, woodwork, anything that you're crafting and creating, you are manifesting your imagination and bringing it into this world. Yes, you're using physical, tangible means, but you have to focus on what you're trying to do. You have to create it. Now, yes, you can discover it and unwrap it, but when you stop working that wood or sculpture, or you stop painting, then it stops being created. So you have to focus on the process of manifestation to bring it about and unfold it and learn what it is as it's going. But I think the same thing is true of spells and prayers. You have your intent and your focus, and putting your intent and focus into that, and then speaking it through words to give it a little extra. I don't think you need to speak, but I think that does add an element to it. I think that does give something to it, an extra vibration to your attempt to manifest. Brain waves, again, vibrations. We can read brain waves on the human brain. I'm not saying it's scientific, but I'm telling you my interpretation. Brain waves are going to cause vibrations. Thoughts cause vibrations. And I believe on a subtle energy vibrational level that there is influence through thoughts. Yes, you mentioned the rights. I can't say that's scientific. I really can't. Science, unfortunately, is something that you can prove. And even in science, it's a fact until you prove it's wrong. The Earth was flat as a fact at one time in science. People come up with theories, and as long as they back it with evidence and data and can reproduce it, it's then a fact until they can prove otherwise. And that has been the case on any scientific discovery throughout the years. And I really do believe yesterday's magic is today's science. I genuinely believe that science has come up out of magic, but with a reproducible result. Magic doesn't always have a reproducible result because the subtle vibrations of the world, if you believe in them, you don't always have the same results, and you can't always see or measure what is influencing or interfering with these said results. Yes, you can take stuff like you can take, I forget what it's called, placebo effect. You can get people to convince themselves something working, so their own mind is causing themselves to heal and get past something. So we obviously can cause influence. Affirmations, we can cause influence through focus and intent. Not just the rice thing. There was something where they had these monks praying and meditating around water, and then they had other water from the same source sitting separately in a different room, and then they froze them, and the water crystals froze differently based upon those meditating or focusing their intent on them versus the ones that weren't. It manifested in a way that seemed like you could physically see it. Again, a pseudoscience. I don't think it's a real science, but it is some sort of representation. So that's my interpretation on the way that that works. That's how I find it being effective. And yeah, I think that's at the core of a lot of things. I think I agree with you. There are many, many, many traditions that talk about this focus and intent and manifesting through will. I think that's at the core of many spiritual beliefs. So that's just my couple thoughts on there. I think I answered everything for you. But yeah, definitely an interesting topic. And thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this at all, consider thumb up, liking, and subscribing. And share your thoughts below. On any of these topics, what do you think of prayer versus enchantment and magic from magic practitioners? What do you think about speech and manifesting energy, or just manifesting things, period, through words, through intent? And what do you feel about as far as focus and how you can manifest it and affect things like the bowl of rice or water, as I had mentioned? Definitely share your thoughts below. I'm not the only person who has thoughts on this, and it's not like what I say is gold and perfect. I'm just sharing an opinion. Thanks for watching.